Well, people are still saying the United States is the richest country in the world, even though, they're debating a lot what to do with their debt. Now, the U.S. has accepted to take on a role after World War II that is given, power corrupts and absolute power corrupted absolutely, and now they've got Trump and his team, right? So it's not like it wasn't predictable. Except that now they want to get away from the responsibility of, being the police of the world by picking and choosing what they'll do instead of entering in a new international agreement without having to go through World War III to do it. So, that's pretty risky that the international community still allows that country to be, able to veto things in the UN or influential in other big international organizations like NATO or G7 or things like that. And it shows, again, the mental illness and developmental disabilities and disconnections from reality that the magical paradigm of money and status and ownership and assets gives, right? Because really, anybody or any country that appears rich is really in debt. And that's what you get on a finite planet, and it gets even worse as the separation grows between the poor and or the norm, the masses, and the elites that are few and that believe, including the norm, that they are powerful and rich and owners of this and that, as if they could take care of everything they own properly without the norm. So this form of mental illness it's even worse than in the time of the pharaohs, really, because the norm understood more about it back then because it wasn't so magical. It was no concept of debt in the way that it is now. There's no, not inability like it's against the law to challenge things, but it requires a kind of critical thinking skills that the norm doesn't have anymore. And when Canada just acts a certain way, nice that it did it before finalizing a deal with the US that really it shouldn't do. And I don't know how long it'll take for the complaints Canada did with the international organizations related to trade about Trump breaking agreements, but I mean, how dumb do countries like the UK or the EU or Japan have to be to get into agreements with agreement breaking people and nations? Like, you gotta be dumb. Like, only the magical monetary paradigm makes people that dumb. They might say, well, we can't totally disconnect really fast or whatever. No, but you can make agreements that have oversight, that have a probation period, that have conditions, and that also have oversight through other of your big organizations. That means if the UK makes an agreement with, the US, and the US breaks it or keeps wanting to change it, or doesn't, the UK does it without including human rights or what's happening in Gaza or what's leading to World War III, or what the U.S. isn't talking about wanting to stop policing the world because, they got so corrupted and fat and rich and bloated and orange that they actually can't even meet their function anymore because they're so corrupted, they're so inefficient at managing their funds and their riches. If the UK doesn't enter into conversation like this and say, okay, we're willing to do an agreement with you because, there's other things that should show up in the news except tariff wars, which really shows how ignorant we are as a species. But, there'll be oversight. Maybe the EU will be oversight that if you break or we break, and here's what the probation period looks like, and if you don't want to police the world anymore, then you have to kind of not escalate, but de-escalate things. And you have to remove yourself as a mediator or peace agreement, person or role or government. Like, you help create, you fund these, and then we're supposed to let you negotiate peace agreements? You fund the wars, you profit from the wars. Like, how dumb do you have to be? So Canada is saying, oh yeah, we are gonna decide that, Palestine is a state. And again, the only way I can see my species as not being totally failed and gone and too late for them, already dead really, brain dead really, automatons, is if they would say, maybe we should make no more states. States is just tribes. Tribe versus tribe is part of our origins, and we don't want to address our origins and how ugly it is as a species. I'm talking about in the hundreds of thousands of years. So when Canada says, oh yeah, but Palestinians must do a democracy, and it could look as dumb as ours do in the West. And, because we think we're great, so we want you to also move to something that makes you think you're great. And then, no Hamas involved, but they don't mention Netanyahu turning himself in to the International Criminal Court, or other people that are part of his team, or UDI soldiers, and I would say probably more than half, that should spend the rest of their days behind bars. So again, Canada, stop with the hypocrisy with your friends. It's like, when you're a bad guy but slightly better than the US is a bad guy, you're really not a nation worth admiring, right? Is stop thinking you're great when you do things too little, too late, as your norm. Because when you do it like that, you keep devolving the human condition, and you don't even want to partake in conversations like with me to explain to you how you do.